in the Bible. Don't worry. I'm with you sometimes there. Father, hallowed be your name. We want your name to be holy in us, through us, in this church, through this church, in the world, through the world. In the heavens, we want your name to be regarded as holy. So work through the teaching of your word now. Work through the rest of this morning, through children hearing your word, through other adults hearing it elsewhere in the building, through folks tuning in online. Cause your name to be regarded highly as holy. Let us see it as good and precious. And then through the rest of the things we do this morning, show us Jesus so that your name would be regarded well here. Help me to teach faithfully. Save me from any anxiety, nervousness, or arrogance and pride in teaching. And as we all listen to your word as well, give us humility so that we can receive it and be transformed by it. Amen. Amen. This morning's lesson is titled Faith Smiles. Faith Smiles. We'll get to that in a minute. Before we talk about a smile, we're going to talk about a frown. So I'll share with you my frown of this past week, or maybe the past couple weeks. So there has been turmoil in the Kunkle household. Turmoil. And I'll share my own turmoil. It's all due to anybody who's done this before probably knows what this is like. We're moving, so out of our house. I know we're moving to Minneapolis in the summer, but we're moving in with my folks. We sold our house early, so we're going to move in with them. And this past week has been, oh man, we got to start going, like packing and fixing and all that stuff, so we get that. And man, like the stress from it. So we got to figure out how we're going to get out of the house, how we're going to get into my folks' house, how we're going to get the stuff into the storage facility. Then in the midst of that, we have 3 kids, ages 4, 2, and 1, that, oh yeah, we're supposed to love them too, right? And then on top of that, at least one of our kids, if not all of them, has also been stressed because we haven't really brought our kids into the act of moving until a couple days ago when it dawned on us, hey, we should include our family in this. And so our kids have seen the whole house just disappearing before their eyes, their whole life that they've known just kind of fade into thin air, and to our surprise, they're stressed. And it comes out in anger. It comes out in disobedience. On top of that, I've been stressing out way too much about trying to get a house to live in Minneapolis, even though that's 3 to 4 months away, but I am stressing about that. And then everything else in life. I got to write lessons for church. I got other things. Life. So I'm stressed, anxious, worried. My jaw has hurt so much. Oh my gosh, my jaw has hurt so much. And on top of that, my soul hurts. It's interesting. So my response to stress, some of you may be in this camp with me as well, I go for quick fixes. What will solve it really quick? So there's 2 areas I go to. One is just kind of pacify it. So I go to YouTube and food. That'll fix it, right? That'll solve my stress. YouTube. Or I go to I scheme. Okay, so if we do this with the kids, then they'll be happy. If we give them an iPad, or if we give them ice cream, or if we do this one little thing, then it'll fix it. All our stress will go away. I try to find what's the simple fix, right? That's not always the easy way. In the midst of my stressing, my scheming, and my scurrying about this week, I found my faith becoming quite unhappy. I felt, it's weird. I don't feel this a lot. I know some of you probably go through these seasons maybe where man, God just feels distant. I'm praying the Psalms, where are you, God? What's going on? Why is life so hard? It just feels cloudy and dark. And then on top of that, or in response to that, the simple good things of life that we've talked about in this class. Food, friends, family, fellowship here. All those things just kind of become hurdles. All right, well, we'll eat because we got to get past that, and we'll spend time together, dear. We got to get past that. We'll spend time with the kids. I'll go to church. But those are all just hurdles to get past until we finally get to the point when we're moved. And this is we're in Minneapolis, so this is still 4 months out. We're in Minneapolis. We're settled. Oh, good. Okay, now finally we can enjoy life. We'll sit down and enjoy a meal. I'll finally enjoy my wife and my kids. What a joke, though, right? But that's what happens when my faith in the Lord gets dark and I'm looking at my life like, it's not the way it's supposed to be right now. But don't worry, in about 4 months, finally it'll be the way it's supposed to be, and then I'll start enjoying things. That's foolishness. That's foolishness. But that's a place we can end up in. And I've found that as I've taken my eyes off God, I've been striving after wind. So, let's take a look at Ecclesiastes chapter 11, and we're going to see how the preacher speaks one more time into our situation of chasing wind, of trying to get life under control rather than just submitting to what God gives us. So we're going to be in Ecclesiastes 11:9, and I'm going to go to 12:7. Ecclesiastes 11:9. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Remove vexation from your heart, put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are hevel. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men are bent, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those who look through the windows are dimmed, and the doors of the street are shut. When the sound of the grinding is low, and one rises at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song are brought low. They are afraid also of what is high, and terrors are in the way. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags itself along, and desire fails, because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. Before the silver cord is snapped, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Throughout the book of Ecclesiastes, the preacher has made observations and brought us into what he's been seeing on earth and some of the conclusions he's come to. The observation, maybe the strongest observation he's made, is we as humans are hungry. Our souls are hungry. We want to be filled with something. We feel our lack, and so we go search of meaning, satisfaction, and gain. And the interesting thing is that as we seek it, the preacher says, we're not able to find it. We can't find the way. We can't put the world together in a way that what our hearts long for so much that we could find it on our own. We're unable to manage and manipulate the world in our favor. And, like our text said today, and like he said multiple times before, even if you could manipulate the world, work through the world in some way to bring about what you really want, you're going to die. And so whatever you want is just going to fade off into the distance. You're not going to be able to hold on to it. Death separates you from those things. Up here on the board, I drew out kind of the sense of what the book of Ecclesiastes is getting at. So here we are, humanity, and we're seeking after, we're trying to find comprehensive understanding. We want to be able to put together the whole universe and everything in a way that we understand it so that we get godhood. We're like gods, that we have God's understanding, therefore we can work like God in the world to produce gain. We can produce what we want in our lives. Essentially, what the preacher's been tapping into is what we see in Genesis 3, where man seeks to be like God, try to have his knowledge of good and evil, have his wisdom, so that we can get what we think is best. The challenge in the book of Ecclesiastes is this. On our seeking for comprehensive understanding, It's like this big haze. This is not good mist. But imagine this is smoke or mist. So as we try to find comprehensive understanding, wisdom, to try to get to our gain, the journey is through this big, thick mist, and you can't find your way. Like, we can't get to it. We keep chasing after it. We're going for it, and we never arrive. So, in the text, the preacher comes one more time to this theme of enjoying life, and he urgently says this as his last word to us: don't delay, get happy, rejoice. Let's think about it. He says this in chapter 11, verse 10. Youth and the dawn of life are hevel. There's that word again, hevel, meaning smoke or mist or breath. Just like that candle, you don't see the smoke anymore. It's gone. That's what youth is like, or the prime of life. When you're young, it just goes, and it's gone. It's going to disappear quick. You can't grasp it. So the preacher says, rejoice, enjoy life while you still have a chance. Or another way, start early. Start enjoying life as soon as you can. Get it figured out now. We know that this phenomenon of youth and the dawn of life just floating off like smoke is true, because we say these types of things. Oh, I wish I would have enjoyed my friends more. I wish I would have spent more time with my family. This is me. Like, I wish I would have honored my parents more when I was a kid. I think I would have been happier. I think I would have enjoyed life more. Oh, I wish I would have worked harder in school. I wish I didn't zone off in physics class, not realizing physics has to do with music, and it'd be really cool, sound waves and all that. It'd be really cool to understand that better. But in high school, I zoned off, like, this isn't cool. I have a better idea of what's fun. Little did I know, God gave me a gift that I could have enjoyed more. Hindsight gives us the ability to see the things we wasted our time on. Therefore, the preacher urgently calls us to some things, to rejoicing. Verse 9. Because our lives are just going to float off like smoke, he says, rejoice, rejoice, be happy, let joy explode out of you. Goes on again, let your heart cheer you. Let your heart cheer you. In a sense, it's okay to be happy. Maybe even better, it's right to be happy. You have a heart. It should be happy. It's good. Let your cup be full. This is where we clarify a little bit of what he means. He says then later on in verse 9, walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes. Now that might sound like, whoa, danger, danger, don't tell anybody that's in the Bible. Walk in the ways of your heart. Do what feels good, right? But here's what he means. Earlier in chapter 6, verse 9, one of my favorite verses from Ecclesiastes, he says, better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. Illustration. You're at Outback Steakhouse, and what'd you get? Prime rib? Great, so you got prime rib. But then somebody next to you gets like the chicken. I don't know, this is a really bad comparison. You didn't get prime rib. No. Throw that away. Yesterday we went to Runza. I'll do my own. You chose the right path. You're obeying the Bible, man. Way to go. I'm at Runza and with my family yesterday, and I get a hamburger. It was pretty good. But we got chicken fingers for the kids, and I know this might not sound good, but I haven't had chicken fingers in a long time because of my diet. And I took some bites of them, and I'm like, I should have gotten chicken fingers. But I got a hamburger, right? And so my appetite wandered to other things. I had a hamburger. I could have just enjoyed it. Better is the sight of the eyes, what you have. But the whole time I'm eating a hamburger, I'm thinking, why don't I have chicken fingers? Why did we come here where the fries aren't that salty? Because we could have gone to Freddy's. This is what I was thinking yesterday. No offense. This wasn't on you. This is on me. But, no, seriously, I'm the one who said we're going to Runza. But I was thinking we should have gone to Freddy's because their fries are a little saltier and greasier. That's what he's saying. Like, so when he says, walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes, enjoy what you have. Find the joy in what you have, not in all the things you don't have or could have. Verse 10, remove vexation from your heart. Put away pain from your body. The sense is free yourself from all the things that are hindering you enjoying God's world, you enjoying your life. So in that sense, get rid of thinking about Freddy's. Just eat the Runza stuff. Eat the French fries and enjoy them. They're tasty. Earlier in the book, chapter 1, verse 18, so talking about vexation, remove vexation, the preacher says this, as he's trying to figure out the world. He says, in much wisdom is much vexation. Trying so hard to get to this, to understand the universe, and trying to get through the fog, oh, that's hard. That's been the past week for me of trying to figure out how can we make the move as smooth as possible so we can finally get to that safe zone where it's peaceful. Trying to figure it out is just taxing, and it makes you sadder. In chapter 2, verse 23, now talking about work, the things we try to do where we try to produce in our life with our hands and our feet, our minds, the things that we want, he says, all the toiling of man's days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. There's that sense in which we're always working and we're trying to get something, but you never get it. Like you never arrive at it. You just keep working and straining and working and straining and working and straining. Maybe the thing you're working for is retirement. Then you get to retirement and then you realize this isn't exactly what I thought it would be. And then you go back and try to work more for something else and you never arrive at it. He says, all that chasing, all that working, all that striving, that's vexation. That's taxing. That's troublesome. Get rid of that. Remove that from your life. It's hindering your heart. This may still sound, though, a little bit too free. The preacher doesn't think that you should just do literally whatever you want. He recognizes, I think, that we have flesh, false desires. He's talked about that through the book. So at the end of verse 9, he says this, essentially, in the fear of the Lord, rejoice. Know that for all these things, you're rejoicing, you're removing vexation. Know that for all those things, God will bring you into judgment. In essence, he's saying there are boundaries to joy. There's boundaries to enjoyment. Anyone who's had kids or worked with kids understand this. If it's anything goes, and you say do whatever you want, it's going to turn into Lord of the Flies, and they're all going to kill each other eventually, right? But if you set boundaries, hey, here's the blocks. You can play with the blocks now. Oftentimes, they're a lot happier because they actually know the safe zone of joy. In the Proverbs, it talks about this, about the safe zone, so to speak, staying on the straight path. Proverbs says, my son, eat honey, for it is good. But then later on, so that was Proverbs 24. Proverbs 25 says, if you found honey, eat only enough for you, lest you have your fill of it and vomit it. So if you have something good, enjoy it. But be careful, because if you just keep trying to gorge yourself in it, become a glutton, it's actually going to consume you. It's going to ruin you, and the joy is going to be lost. So when the preacher says, know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment, he's saying that there is an accounting that you will give for your actions. And it's this way, two ways. One, you will account for the things that you choose to do. Therefore, don't overindulge in life. Be careful. The second thing he does, something we probably don't think about as much, is you'll be judged for the things you choose not to do. In this sense, I think the preacher's saying, don't neglect to enjoy life. When he says, rejoice, God will bring you into judgment for all that you do. He's saying, if you don't do that, if you don't rejoice, if you don't find enjoyment in the things that God gives you, God's going to judge you that you didn't cherish his gifts. I don't know if we think about that. I quoted this from last week from Deuteronomy where God says, you're going to be exiled from the land because you didn't obey me. You didn't obey me with joyfulness and gladness of heart. You didn't enjoy the things. You didn't receive the things that I gave you with joy. He kind of wraps out this part of remembering God where he says in chapter 12, verse 1, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Essentially saying, don't forget the source of your life and the source of your joy. As you're enjoying things, as you're rejoicing in life, don't forget from whom all those things come from. Remember him. So he's calling us to rejoice in the fear of the Lord. Wisdom literature is all about teaching us the fear of the Lord, how to revere God. And in that sense, it is how to trust God, how to have faith in God. I was reflecting on it this week of the relationship between Proverbs, Job, and Ecclesiastes, what's often called wisdom literature. These three books that all talk about the fear of the Lord or faith from a different angle. And here's how I might say each of the books, you could sum them up and their relationship. They're all teaching you the fear of the Lord or faith, and here's how so. Proverbs says this: faith listens. If you think about Proverbs, there's all this, my son, listen, hear, listen to God's instruction. Faith, or the fear of the Lord, listens to God. It heeds his voice. Job, a story of great suffering, is faith endures. Faith doesn't give up. Faith stays steadfast, as James says. The interesting nature of Ecclesiastes, something we, again, probably don't consider enough, is that faith smiles. So the heart here is kind of faith, and the smile is, well, a smile. But faith smiles. I think that's the essence of what the preacher's trying to get us to say is, the fear of the Lord isn't this, but the fear of the Lord is, You're no longer striving. You're no longer chasing. You're no longer vexed. If you actually walk in the fear of the Lord, you're, finally I can rest. There's this satisfaction. So this smile has contentment, satisfaction, joy in it. Faith smiles. Therefore, the proper response to God, knowing him, is fear or faith. The proper expression of faith is joy. When you lean not on your own understanding, but you trust God with all your heart, the proper response to everything in life, to every circumstance, to every relationship, is to see them as gifts from God to be enjoyed. When you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, when you fear him, lean no longer on your understanding, everything in life should start taking the form of a gift. You see everything as a gift to be enjoyed and cherished. In this sense, it's like back in Genesis 3, we say no to the talking snake and yes, please, to the Creator God. The snake in Genesis 3 says, boy, you have all this stuff, but God's leaving out that one thing. Boy, don't you really want that? And we say, no, look at everything God's given me. And we say, yes, and you cherish all the good things God's given you, and you don't doubt, why didn't he give me that? You don't chase after it. You don't hunger after it, because in the fear of the Lord, you're content. God's given me a whole garden of delights, a tree of life, a wife or a husband. And we cherish all those things instead of going and seeking other false desires. This may come as a surprise. Some of you may have pondered this before, but I don't think our problem, I think the preacher would agree with me, that our problem as humans is that we have too much joy, but we have too little. He wouldn't command us, this is the 7th time in the book, where as talking about, we're chasing after trying to find meaning and gain in wisdom, in pleasure, in work, in relationships, all these things where we're trying to find it. And he stops and says, stop chasing, just enjoy what God's given you. The fact that he's told us 7 times over in this book, just enjoy life, rejoice in it. Come on, just receive what God's given you. That means that we don't do that well. We don't do it well enough. C.S. Lewis made a similar remark, saying, our desires are not too strong, but too weak. Let me explain this. Here's how I know this. Think about the ways that we react to the lot that God has given us. Think about how quickly we complain about our house. We got to fix all the holes in the wall. What a pain. Our cars, there's always breaking down. Our marriage, why can't she ever just get it together? Our kids, we complain about them man, I can't wait till they're older finally so then they can be responsible. And then when they're older, why can't you be young again and innocent? We're never content. We don't ever smile. Like, we just always have this problem of complaint. That's not it, though. Think about how quickly we get angry when things don't go our way. So maybe this morning, probably all of you, myself included, so just things were, like there was a few moments this morning where things didn't go according to my plan for the morning, and I get frustrated by it. That means that I don't have the fear of the Lord before me at all times, thinking, well, God's ordered my day. I can trust him. My anger says I don't enjoy life well enough. Think about how little we engage in the spiritual discipline of thanksgiving. How often do you say, first, just thank you to one another for thank you for, Sam, thank you for playing the horn so well this morning. Really, it was delightful. Thank you for that. I don't say that. I just assume it. Oh, you all know that I'm thankful for you, right? Let alone, how much do we thank God? Thank you for the house that I can fill in the holes and that I can have purpose and meaning in life and do something with my life. Thank you for my kids. They're tough, but that teaches me a lot about myself of how tough I must be to you. Thank you for that. Boy, we don't thank God enough. Or how often do we think this? If only I had, fill in the blank. If only I had this, then I would be satisfied. Then I'd be happy. Then the smile comes. If only I had whatever you want to say. All of these things show us that we only have half yielded to God because our joy is only half-hearted. Therefore, we must humble ourselves before the Lord, confess our sins of ingratitude and joylessness, and plead that our hearts would be able to receive all things from God as gifts to be enjoyed. So the preacher is urgent to say, get it together. Start cherishing the life that God has given you. He moves on into chapter 12 and gets really urgent about this. This is the end of the book, so it's kind of like his last, let's do it now. He gets urgent. I looked up the definition of urgent. Not like we really need it. We all feel this regularly. But it's good to be refined in our thinking. Urgency, requiring immediate action or attention in response to a pressing or critical situation. So, your kids can't breathe well. You run them to the hospital. Last year at this time, we took Dolly to the hospital 2 or 3 times because her breathing was all messed up. This past week, you saw this on, if you got the emails or the texts about a couple kids in the church couldn't breathe well. That's urgent. Let's go get them some care. The house is on fire. Get out. That's urgent. No explanation needed. Or maybe a family member is on their deathbed. You feel an urgency to get to them and share that last moment, right? So urgency generally are moments of life and death. Very few things in life are actually all that urgent, or in another sense, as the preacher might say, everything's urgent, because all is life and death. But generally, it's those matters of life and death. We often make things far more urgent. Like this morning, we went out and got donuts for the kids, and I felt like, oh man, I got to go fast so I can get home so I can get to church really quick on time. As if being urgent about it's going to make my car work any better and make the donuts come any faster. Getting urgent about donuts, that's not a good place to put your urgency. But the preacher here draws our attention to death. He says in the rest of chapter 12, you're going to die, and it's going to come quick, and it ain't going to be fun. Therefore, start rejoicing today. So he begins in chapter 12, verse 1. He's made this exhortation, rejoice in life, remember God before old age sets in. He says this, chapter 12, 1, before the evil days come and the years draw near of which you say, I have no pleasure in them. Remember, he's been addressing a youth. We'll see this in the next, next Sunday. The book's been all written to a young person, just like Proverbs, like a father to a son or a sage to some young men. Hey, learn wisdom. And he says, you better get this thing figured out now because it's going to start getting hard soon. Your body's not going to work as well. Days are going to get tough. And you're going to have this attitude where I don't really enjoy life anymore because it's just hard. That's what he means by that in 12:1. 12:2, he goes on, he uses that phrase before again. Get rejoicing, remember God, before your body starts to deteriorate. So he's going to go into a metaphor in the rest of this section of a storm approaching where the clouds come in. and it gets really dark. And then it's a storm approaching a village. There's a household there, and we're going to look at members of the household and how they pull back in fear and trembling because of the storm that's approaching. The metaphor, likely, is a metaphor of death is approaching. The last days are approaching for your life. And the household is like your body, and as each part of the household starts to pull back, it's like your body falling apart. So this is the metaphor. Imagine a household, storm approaching, but you're the house. You'll hopefully be able to see this. So, 12:2, the sun, the light, and the moon and the stars are darkened because the clouds return after the rain. The clouds just keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. 12:3, in the days when the keepers of the house tremble. The keepers of the house are probably male servants, so they're the ones who would kind of take care of household things. The keepers of the house tremble, likely referring to hands. I think you'll start seeing the connections in a minute. So in the days as the storm of death approaches, and as you age, we see this in elderly people, your hands start to shake. The strong men are bent, probably referring to the nobility of the house, the master of the house, and maybe referring to the legs, as you just don't walk as straight anymore. As the body deteriorates, the storm's approaching. The grinders cease, and they are few, probably referring to female slaves who would be outside at a wheel grinding like flour, wheat, and they cease. The grinders stop working because there's not a lot of them left because the storm's coming. Probably, this is one of the ones that really clue you in. Probably talking about your teeth. Just think about when you get old, especially if you're not in modern day, your teeth start falling out. They're few. They don't work as well. Okay, I'm not going to pull out my teeth right now. Those who look through the windows are dimmed, probably referring to the eyes. So your eyes go dim. You can see how it's talking about the body falling apart, like getting old. It's not fun. Does this sound fun? No. The metaphor continues. The sound of the grinding is brought low, probably to your ears stop working. You can't hear as well, right? The storm's approaching. The storm gets loud, and everything else in life just gets kind of dim. They're afraid of what is high, probably the storm, afraid of death. Oh, it's fearful when it comes. Terrors are in the way. If you went outside the house as the storm comes, boy, that's terrifying. The almond tree blossoms. I know this sounds kind of weird, but when an almond tree blossoms, it turns white, just like your hair does when you grow old. So white hair. The grasshopper drags itself along, probably talking about even the littlest things in life become burdens. Oh, just even walking maybe. You imagine you see somebody really aged walking like this. That does not look pleasurable, right? You're losing your joy. The desire fails, or some of you may have, it's actually the caperberry is ineffective. And what that is, the caperberry was something that, like a fruit that would be used as an aphrodisiac. So just saying pleasure, the loss of pleasure as you grow older and older, like he says back in verse 1, those days will come when you have no more pleasure in them. Just when you get older, it's just harder for life to be sweet because it's getting bitter. And then the metaphor disappears in verse 5, and it goes to the reality. Because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. So you're going to die, and people are getting ready for the funeral. Every time our bodies slow down, or we feel sick, hurting, even when we're young, us young folks should take a hint. That should be a reminder that we're all dying, and a day's going to come when it's going to get a lot worse. And a lot worse, and a lot worse as we deteriorate. The preacher finishes talking about death itself in verse 6. Before the silver cord is snapped, the golden bowl is broken, talking about precious things that break. So your life being something precious, it's gone. It's snapped. You're not going to fix it. The bowl is shattered on the floor, just like your life. When you die, it's just gone. The pitcher is shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. So imagine going to a well, a woman going to a well, she has the pitcher, and she's going to go fill it up, but the pitcher falls and it breaks. It can't hold water anymore. And when she gets to the well, the little pulley wheel that she's going to pull some water up with, that's broken. She can't get to the water anymore. The essence is that the life is gone. Water, I think, kind of being a correlation with life. The pitcher doesn't hold water anymore. Your body doesn't hold life anymore. And you can't get to it anymore. Finally, again, the metaphor fades into reality in chapter 12, verse 7. The dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. The reversal of Genesis 2:7. God took the dust of the ground, formed a man, and breathed life into it. And then what happens in death, because of sin, the dust goes back down, and the breath goes back to God, the life goes back to God. So why this extended metaphor on death? How does this help us? The point is that we should feel the urgency of getting wise in God, the urgency of trusting God, of fearing God today, and then therefore enjoying God through his gifts. Because sooner, not later, you are not going to have the opportunity to fear God because you're going to be dead. This is just like a fire and brimstone sermon right here. Get right with God because you're going to die. What's going to happen? But the interesting thing is this sermon has massive implications for the present moment we're in. Get right with God so that you can live today, so you can enjoy life today, because life begins now. David Gibson, I've quoted this book a few times in his book, Living Life Backward. He says a few great things about death. First one, dying people are the most alive. So you think about, if somebody tells you you're going to die, boy, you get to it. I'm going to Disney World, or I'm going to go to my favorite restaurant, or I'm going to spend time with all my family, right? If somebody told me I was going to die a week ago, I would not be fretting over my house. I wouldn't have been neglecting my children. I would have been all in with them. Dying people are the most alive. He says this, an extended quote, "Death reorients us to our limitations as creatures and helps us to see God's good gifts right in front of us all the time, each and every day of our lives. Ordinarily, we eat and drink simply as fuel to enable us to keep going with our work. Ordinarily, we work, not just to earn a living, but to find satisfaction and purpose." Over here, gain. Find satisfaction and purpose, and very likely make a reputation for ourselves and achieve success. What if the pleasure of food is a daily joy that we ungratefully overlook? What if our work was never intended for us to become successful like this? What if our work wasn't intended for us to become successful, but simply to make us faithful and generous? Isn't that interesting thing about, what if all the things in your daily life weren't all these means to an end, but just were little mini ends, mini ends. There's an ultimate end, yeah? Somebody shared this with me early on in the Ecclesiastes class, and I had to find a time to share it. Some of you have probably heard this. S. Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, he said, "Food is essential to life, therefore make it good." I think he understands the preacher's message. You got to eat. God has made you with a stomach and taste buds. That's a clue into, one, you need to eat, and two, why not enjoy it? Maybe God designed you that way. Only the person with a happy faith can truly enjoy life because they don't worry about all the things they don't have or could have. They come to terms with this, that in their chasing through the fog, as they're living in the dense fog of life, this is going to happen. Death. They're never getting here. The person who fears God knows, not mine. That's God's, not mine. This is why I'm not getting there, but also I'm a created thing. And therefore, the one who fears God lives happily in the present, just trusting him for what he has given you. All the sweetness that you taste in the gifts of God in your life, your family, food, your job, church, all the sweetness that you taste in life ought to lead you back to a greater delight in him. So just a couple days ago, we went to go down to, we call it the ice cream bridge, down Dairy Queen at down by the middle school off of 84th Street. And we'd like taking our kids there and eating ice cream on the bridge. And we went there, it was like, said it was 50 degrees outside, but the wind was probably 50 miles per hour, and so it felt like it was about 20 degrees. And we're sitting up there with our blizzards like, this stinks. So we went back to the car because we wanted to enjoy them, right? But man, those things are sweet, right? A blizzard's sweet, and it's meant to be enjoyed. As you pause and simply savor the sweetness of an M&M blizzard, God is reminding you of how sweet he is. That's why all of our gifts, everything in life, every single thing, all of his gifts, all of your life is just an extension of him, letting you know how sweet he is. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Therefore, we ought to be urgent to rejoice in God's gifts. A couple last maybe implications or remaining questions, things that maybe the preacher doesn't seem to address as much. So we're supposed to get happy in life. We're supposed to get happy in God. We're supposed to fear God. Enjoy it all, right? It's so good. We got M&M blizzards all the time, Disney vacations all the time. Our family's happy. There's no struggle. That's why you can enjoy it, right? Because life's easy. Because it's so easy, so it's easy to enjoy. No, life is not M&M blizzards and Disney vacations, right? Life isn't what would seem good all the time. So that's a question we say, like, preacher, you're nuts, dude. I can't rejoice all the time. I'll only rejoice when it's time to rejoice, when something's good. The Bible is fully aware that this world is full of suffering and pain. The preacher, the book of Ecclesiastes, sometimes is like talked about like that's the book that lets you in on that. Life's tough. It's hard. It's taxing. Things don't go the way you think they ought to. The wicked do well in life, and the righteous don't do well in life. The Bible is fully aware of this. Does that mean that in moments of suffering or sorrow that our faith is in vain? Or maybe, does that mean when life's hard that the smile of our faith, it might not be on our face, but the contentment, the satisfaction of our faith, when life's hard, is this a fake smile? Are we just faking it with God? Like life's tough, like, but I believe you, I trust you. See, I trust you, God. Yeah, but this is terrible. I hate it. Is this fake? That's a question we should be asking of the preacher. Well, there's these interesting lines from both New Testament and Old that I think speak to a different way of living, where even we see the things that God gives us in life as difficult as things to rejoice in. The imperative, rejoice, stands for all of life. Whatever the lot that God has given you, you ought to rejoice. Romans 5, 3-5. We rejoice in our sufferings. Not because we're like, woo, suffering is awesome. Let's all die and get hurt and stuff. No, that's not it. We rejoice in our suffering because suffering produces endurance, character, and hope. Because in our suffering, we see something else other than just the pain. We see God working. God's in it. I got a big smile on my heart. I might not be on my face. There might be tears everywhere, but I see God working, so my faith still smiles. It's content. It's satisfied in God. Paul describes him and his other band of missionary brothers as treated as sorrowful, yet always rejoicing, as having nothing, yet possessing everything. Or something that, for those who are doing the Psalm 119 study, this is just, like, what a line. If we could say this together. Psalm 119:71. It was good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. Do you say that? It was good. Praise God that I was afflicted, that I could learn his word. Because before that, this is another line, before I was afflicted, I went astray. Before God disciplined me as a son, I wandered. But then God afflicted me. It was tough. But boy, I am grateful for it because it straightened me up, kept me on the straight and narrow. Suffering is the test of whether or not you fear God. Think about Job. That's the whole book. Does he just fears you because you just give him good stuff. Job just fears God because he just has an easy life. He says, no way, I'll show you. He'll have a hard life and he'll still fear me. Suffering is a test. God's gift of suffering in your life is him asking you the question, do you trust me? Do you fear me? Are you going to go back to listening to snakes and wandering? Are you going to go lusting after created things to just pacify it? You're going to go to that YouTube all the time, Bobby? Are you going to pretend to be a God and act like you have it in control, even though the whole world's falling apart? Do you really mean it when you say God works all things together for good? Suffering is a test. Testing your faith. Do you mean that? Do you mean that? And in the end, the test, if you pass it, is to purify your faith. Get rid of some of the leftovers of the old man. Burn them off. And to increase your joy. As your faith strengthens, the smile, the grin widens because you know God better, more faithfully, and you fear him more. This is where Jesus is vital to this. If we don't have Jesus, this lesson, the whole Bible, everything's a sham. Jesus, for the joy set before him, he suffered under the weight of our joylessness, our ingratitude, our hate of God, in order that he would redeem for himself a people who are always rejoicing through him, who see all things in life as God's gifts to us. On the cross, Jesus bore our dull ears, our stiff necks. I'm not going to bend, I'm going to chase after this. Jesus bore that attitude in us, our sins. He bore our hard hearts, our lustful eyes, our overly innovative hands and feet that chase wind. Jesus bore our foolish minds that are wise in their own sights. And Jesus bore all of our weak and misplaced enjoyments in his creation. Every time that you enjoy God's creation inappropriately or neglect to enjoy it appropriately, those sins Jesus bore in his body on the tree, because those were offensive to God. God gave you a gift, and you either turned it into a god or you said, I don't want that. Therefore, Jesus is our freedom. We don't have to feel the need to set the agenda, to say, God, here's how the way life should go. We don't have to toil and strive. We don't have to manufacture the good life. Jesus is leading the way. We don't have to chase wind, like that line from Ecclesiastes over. We're striving after wind, trying to find and create meaning, because we just chase Jesus. We just follow him, and he leads the path to life and satisfaction. Jesus is our strength. Only because of him can we deny ourselves and fear God. We don't have to know the way. We don't know the way. Because Jesus is leading us, we can be content with that. Since Jesus is walking before us and we're just following like sheep, you don't have to know the way. You just follow. Jesus is the power that enables us to loosen our grip on our own lives and simply to cling to God. And therefore, Jesus is our life, our joy, our contentment, and our satisfaction. When we die with Jesus, we live with him. When we lose our life, we gain new life, the life of Jesus. When we forsake our own pursuits, we gain new pursuits, the pursuits of Jesus. And when we let go of our weak, selfish, godless joy, we gain new joy, the joy of Jesus. In that sense, I think this smile, the smile of faith, is just the smile of Jesus. I think we're just the joy of Jesus in our faith. That's why Paul can say this in Philippians 4. Think about it as a reaction to Ecclesiastes, trying to find something, find satisfaction, gain in our life. Paul says, not that I'm speaking of being in need. I don't have any need of this. Nothing at all. I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound in any and every circumstance. I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. In essence, here's what Paul's saying. If I don't have Jesus, I can't do anything. Life's a pain. It is, in the words of Ecclesiastes, vexing, troublesome. I am tired, never satisfied if I don't have Jesus. I'd be aimless, an idolater, a thief, a worshiper of money, discontent, unhappy, overwhelmingly discouraged. But if I have Jesus, I can do all things. This is the essence of the happy faith of Ecclesiastes. I'm satisfied with God being God. I'm happy that he's God and I'm not. I don't need this. Get rid of the godhood. I don't need to become a god. He is, and he's much better at it than I am. I'm resting in his will and not my own. I'm glad to know him, which is better than knowing all things apart from him. God is gain, therefore I count all other pursuits for gain as loss. And even though my face, like Jesus, might be drenched with tears, wrought with sorrow and pain, my faith always smiles in happy submission and reception of God's good and perfect plan. So Ecclesiastes is calling us urgently to get happy in God and therefore be happy in everything else that he gives. I'm going to close this by reading a poem by A.M. Overton called He Maketh No Mistake. And I hope that you find this edifying. My Father's way may twist and turn. My heart may throb and ache. But in my soul I'm glad, I know, he maketh no mistake. My cherished plans may go astray, my hopes may fade away, but still I'll trust my Lord to lead, for he does know the way. Though night be dark, and it may seem that day will never break, I'll pin my faith, my all in him. He maketh no mistake. There's so much now I cannot see. My eyesight's far too dim. But come what may, I'll simply trust and leave it all to him. For by and by the mist will lift, and plain it all he'll make. Through all the way, though dark to me, he made not one mistake. That's the joy of Ecclesiastes, is looking at your life and saying, this is not a mistake. This is God's good pleasure. He does whatever he pleases, and therefore let's receive his pleasure with joy. Let's pray. Father, unite our hearts to fear your name. They are so divided. Give us the faith of Jesus, the eyes of Jesus, the trust of Jesus, the joy of Jesus, so that even throughout this morning, we would just be so content and happy in whatever it is you bring, whether we're frustrated now, distracted now, or focused now. Give us contentment with the lot that you've given us, and glorify Jesus as we experience his joy in us. Thank you for the freedom to trust you. Thank you for the freedom to enjoy you and your gifts. Amen. Thanks, friends.